This is a big one that I see so many of my humans struggling with. I personally struggled with this as well. Even being someone who, truthfully, I always saw myself as someone who was like really good at routines and really good at structures and really good at waking up and doing the thing that I wanted to do, like do a yoga class, do a workout class, go for a walk, journal, meditate, all of these things that kind of get added to a very long list of self-care, personal development, wellness. Again, what we kind of see in the external world is quote unquote perfect, or what we should be doing that's supposed to make us feel good. But in reality, we can be doing all of those things. Again, externally, it can look like we're doing all those things, but internally, it doesn't actually make us feel the way that we want to feel. And then we kind of feel like we're falling short, not able to actually integrate all of the things that we feel like we need to be doing. Welcome back to the Essence Show and podcast. Today, we're going to dive into the number one secret for seamlessly integrating wellness and personal growth routines into daily life. And this is going to be something that we don't really hear about a lot. Like, this is a secret. And if you've been someone who's been listening to a lot of these personal development podcasts, you're really doing the inner work, you're wanting to see some results. I promise you, this is going to be something that you have not heard this way before. So stay tuned. Before we dive in, welcome. My name is Olivia Heine. I am a wellness cycle coach and NLP expert. So I'm really here to help you shift and heal and liberate everything that's going on internally so that you can flow in your life externally. And what I'm really here to support and talk about is imperfect balance. We hear so much about this perfect balance aesthetic, like everything that we see on social media. It's so beautifully promoted and put together. And often, especially when we're striving to create a sense of inner peace and wellness in our own lives, and we're seeing all of this stuff all around us, it can feel really hard to compete with that. And one of the best analogies that I love so much is what we end up doing then is basically changing the outside coat of our house as opposed to actually renovating the inside, which is actually where we're going to be living and experiencing that sense of peace and inner balance. And when we see things externally and we're following all of these like little quick fix tips and fast solutions, we're really just giving our outside a facelift, right? It's like, oh, I'm doing this thing, so it seems like I have balance, or it seems like I have this ease, or it seems like I'm getting it right. But internally, we're still feeling super jumbled and all over the place. So this is what imperfect balance is all about, that you don't have to follow this external strategy and framework. You get to make this absolutely yours. And the whole point is that when you do, that's when it works. When you make it work for you, that is when things start to flow. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Follow along on this journey. I would love for you to step into this community and really give yourself the space to dive into setting up structures and flows that support you. And that's really what we're talking about here. So this is your space to feel supported, to connect with like-minded souls, to get support and ask your questions. That is what we're here for. Ultimately, that's what I'm here for. So you're welcome to always reach out to me as well. And like I said, subscribe so that you get notified every week when we put out a new episode. So let's talk about the number one secret to seamlessly integrating wellness and personal growth routines into daily life. This is a big one that I see so many of my humans struggling with. I personally struggled with this as well. Even being someone who, truthfully, I always saw myself as someone who was like really good at routines and really good at structures and really good at waking up and doing the thing that I wanted to do, like do a yoga class, do a workout class, go for a walk, journal, meditate, all of these things that kind of get added to a very long list of self-care, personal development, wellness. Again, what we kind of see in the external world is quote unquote perfect, or what we should be doing that's supposed to make us feel good. But in reality, we can be doing all of those things. Again, externally, it can look like we're doing all those things, but internally, it doesn't actually make us feel the way that we want to feel. And then we kind of feel like we're falling short, not able to actually integrate all of the things that we feel like we need to be doing. So I'm going to go through a few things that I see happen a lot and just reflect and see if this is you. This might be you if you are struggling to apply the learned theories of personal development or practices of personal development or wellness in everyday routines. So you've read all the books, you've done all the things, you know what's on your list. Like I said, listing out meditation, journaling, lemon water, some sort of movement, maybe some sort of breath work. And suddenly the list feels really long and you're like, okay, well, how do I actually integrate this now? How do I make this feel good for me? And am I doing it right? This might be you if you feel like there's a disconnect between this intellectual understanding. So again, you've read lots of things, lots of books, you've listened to lots of podcasts, maybe you've even done some courses, but there's a disconnect between what you're learning and what you're understanding and then actually practical application of it. So actually implementing those things. It doesn't feel like it's as easy. You feel like you're falling short. You feel like you're kind of overwhelmed by it. And finally, this is you if you feel like there's a frustration over the slow pace of personal change. So maybe you are trying to do all these things and you're like, what gives? Like, why is this not changing? Why is nothing happening here? And that very naturally, I resonate with that, feels fucking frustrating, right? We really kind of come up against this wall. And I felt like that for honestly such a long time, longer than I would like to admit, like years, where I was doing so much of what I thought I should be doing, what is taught, these practical theories or these practices of, again, wellness, personal development, really wanting to change my mindset, really wanting to move things forward in my life, and really believing that it came down to what I was experiencing and doing internally, but nothing was changing, or I always found myself back at the same place. And it was frustrating as fuck. So if any of these 3 points sound like you or you resonate with these, stay tuned. You are not alone, first of all. And we're going to dive into actually how you can start to move yourself out of these in this episode today. So the thing is, you might say, yes, all of those statements sound like me. But now I want to ask you a more important question. And that is, you might be feeling like you're doing all of the things or that you're really trying hard to implement. And you're saying, yes, I'm kind of struggling to implement, or I don't know how to apply it properly, or I'm frustrated with the slow pace of change. But I really want you to ask yourself whether or not you are engaged in sporadic self-care activities without a structured plan, and whether or not you are also using generic wellness advice that doesn't apply to your unique needs. And this is a thing that I see happen all the time that actually gets us caught up in cycles of doing lots of things that seem to be self-care, that we feel like we're going to be making progress, and then we don't see the progress because number one, it's sporadic. We're doing too many different things and we don't have a plan in place. And number two is the things that we're actually doing are too generic. They're not made for you. They're not applied to what you actually need support in right now. And the thing that's really important to understand, and the reason why you're not making the progress that you want to be making, is that it's not just about self-care in the general sense of, okay, I'm just going to do something nice and feel good. Because if you just want to feel good, like go for a walk or take a bath. And those self-care practices are really important, but there's a difference between self-care and personal growth. So if you're engaging in sporadic quote unquote self-care activities or even sporadic self-growth activities, it doesn't matter which one of those are if they're not tailored to you. But I think it's important to just separate this definition between what is self-care, which is, okay, I'm going to nurture myself here. I'm going to get out into nature. I'm going to do things that tend to my inner world. And those things are so, so important. That is not what this is about. However, if you're wanting to really activate growth, then we need to be putting some friction into what you're doing. And for example, taking a bath isn't a whole lot of friction. That's a nervous system regulation tool to calm down. But if you're simultaneously still very anxious and overwhelmed, then you need a growth tool to actually start healing that so that you can be in that self-care environment, bathtub situation and scenario where you can relax. Does that make sense? So it's really important here to just separate those two, and then also understand that often what we're doing is we're just taking generic wellness advice. We're saying, okay, all these self-care girlies out there, and like, no hate, no shade. I am here for the self-care. That is so important. Like I said, it's part of actually nurturing and tending to your nervous system. But if we're just like, making pretty baths and cute smoothies and matcha teas, like, I love to see that. I'm a big fan of all of that content, but that doesn't actually change anything internally for you. So ultimately, because of how you're really trying to implement these tools and to no fault of your own, because this is just, the tools that you've been given, you're not making any progress. Or maybe you keep falling off of your progress because all the things that you're doing are creating so much overwhelm and this pressure to do it perfect or to get it right? And so when you get stuck in that cycle, which again is only natural because of what we've been taught, everything that you're seeing is saying, just do this thing, just do that thing, like do the journaling, do the lemon water, do the meditation, do the walk in nature. But if you're not applying that to where you need that application, number one, it's going to be really hard to actually lock it in a way that works for you, that actually is supporting you in your life. And you're not going to see the progress that you want because, again, it's not locked into where you need it to be supporting you. It's just a general concept that is nice and seems to work for other people, but not you. And that's a really dangerous place to get to then, because then we start to build this belief that it works for everyone else, but not for me. So let's talk about what this number one secret is to actually seamlessly integrating this wellness for yourself. So that could be that self-care, or that could be a goal or something that you're wanting to build in your life around your inner wellness or your outer wellness, and or personal growth routines into your daily life. So what is this number one secret? And truthfully, I'm going to give you a little bit more information before I tell you the number one secret, but it comes down to understanding yourself and your needs and your body. So part one to the secret is following a method from a book or from a self-help leader out there who has posted something on social media and said, do these 3 steps and it'll work for you. It is not going to work for you. It doesn't mean that this in general couldn't work for you, but if you're just taking it at face value and you're feeling like you need to implement it immediately without actually tailoring it to you and your needs, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute, it's not going to work for you. And again, it might work for a while and then you might fall off. It might just be one more thing on your list where you then feel way too overwhelmed to actually do any of it. It could be the thing that breaks the camel's back, or you're doing it and you're like, this is nice, but like, I'm not getting anywhere with this. Like, is this even worth it? So here is the secret. What you're doing in your daily routines, and in order to actually sustain these as routines and habits, it needs to match 3 things. Number one, it needs to match your lifestyle. So what you're doing needs to support and align with the kind of lifestyle that you have and that you would like to have. So that means asking yourself the question, what does my schedule look like? What do I actually have the capacity for? And what do I maybe need in my day to support myself in feeling good in my schedule? It's also a really good point to ask yourself, what are my biggest struggles? What are you struggling with right now that having a certain system or routine in place could actually support you with? Not every tool works the same for each person and for each struggle. So again, using a tool that someone has recommended or that someone's talked about online at face value without actually shifting it and applying it to the way that it needs to be applied in your specific life and for your lifestyle can either mean that it's not going to work for you, or it's going to feel like just dead weight there that's not actually making the changes that you want to make. And it's just one more thing that you feel like you have to do on your to-do list. Number 2 is it needs to match your values. What is important to you? And it's really a powerful practice to create your list of values. And there's an array of different ways to do this. I really love to do this through reflective practices and using tools like astrology, like human design. If you're into anything like that, that can be a really powerful way to dig deeper and identify what are your values. Gene keys are also amazing for this to kind of give you a sense of direction. Because again, it's really easy to be super generic about that and just say, okay, well, I value freedom and I value financial freedom and I value travel and I value quality time. And it's like, okay, yeah, but like what makes you specific and unique in this sense? Like, what are your very unique values here that are also going to change the way that you want to tailor your daily routines for supporting your body, your mind, your emotions, this wellness vehicle that is bringing you through life? And number three, it needs to match your cyclical nature. So this is about matching with your body. And again, I literally just mentioned this is your vehicle that is bringing you through life. And if you are not supporting it and you're not working with it, you're working against it. And you are going to be working twice as hard to move anything forward, which is another way in which we kind of have a hard time integrating routines and personal development tools and habits into daily life because we are working against our bodies. So when you know what you want to implement, so you know what your lifestyle looks like, you know what your values are, and you have some clarity then around, okay, well, why do I even want to implement a meditation period in my morning right now? Right? Why do I want to do journaling? Like, what is this serving me? What is my purpose behind it? I'm not just doing it because someone told me this is like self-care girly and I'm going to do it, but what is it actually giving me? Why do I want to do this thing? So once you know what you want to implement, then comes the how. And this is what your cyclical nature comes down to. So you have a rhythm within your body that determines when you're going to be most productive, when you're going to need to slow down and rest more, when you're going to be feeling really tuned in and aligned with clarity. And that happens throughout the day, that happens throughout the month. Like there's all these different cycles that we go through, and these are innate systems within our body. So once you know what you want to be implementing, you actually want to look at how you're going to be doing it, because showing up the exact same way every single day most likely isn't going to work for you. That's not how we are made as humans. We just have this narrative that we've been taught that that's how things are, that every single day we need to show up exactly the same. And so when we can actually build the way that we're showing up in our personal development, in our wellness, and the things that we're wanting to do for ourselves in a cyclical manner, we can actually support ourselves and work with our bodies and not feel like we're constantly pushing twice as hard to get things done or have this fear that we're going to fall off of it because we're exhausting ourselves. So what this all comes down to, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but this is imperfect balance. This is not about having like this perfect, beautiful aesthetic, this hype of balance that we're seeing online right now in the online space. This is not it. We are here for imperfect balance, which means it works for you as the beautiful, imperfect human being that you are. And the more that we can really claim that for ourselves, the more we can actually release this pressure of having to get it all right away. So if you're feeling this pressure to do it all perfect in order for it to work, or you feel like you have to get it right, and you have this extensive like expectation of yourself of what you need to do in order to show up to feel good in your wellness routine, in your personal development routine, or just in your daily routines in general, and you're like, this is not feeling good, or I'm not seeing the progress that I want. Again, those 3 points that we mentioned at the beginning, if any of those are you, then it is absolutely crucial to identify what your imperfect balance system is. And that's basically what we talked about today too. It's not just about saying, okay, I'm going to do these 3 things, but it's about applying it so that it works for you. What is it that you want to be creating in your system, and having the framework for that that is customized and unique to you. The first step to doing this is really by understanding yourself and what we talked about today in terms of lifestyle, values, your cyclical nature, and on top of that, what's going on internally in your body, in your mind, in your emotional world that is creating all of this pressure, that is making you feel like you have to do all these things, or that you're somehow falling short if you don't get it right. And so that is what we're doing inside Liberation, which is my brand new course. There's currently a waitlist open. I invite you to get on it. And what we're going to be doing is putting you back in the driver's seat of your mind and emotions so that you are no longer driven by this external pressure to get it right or to be perfect, but to actually implement this imperfect balance and your system for imperfect balance. So the link to that is in the description below. Additional links to some freebies that you can get on to really help you get this activated. The resources that I have there for you are amazing. To my website, if you want to reach out and inquire about working together one-on-one, all of that is in the description and in the show notes below. I'm going to leave you at that. If you have questions, if you have shares, if something resonated with you, I invite you to let me know. Reach out, leave a comment, leave a rating and review. I would love to hear from you, and I will see you back here next time.